Hey team, I want to shoot this one a little bit from the hip, responding to breaking news, which is Thrasio filing for bankruptcy. So if I can put this on, I will be able to, which I've got. So Thrasio, why is that on the screen? Thrasio have just filed for bankruptcy. So let's have a look at this report here and let's see what it says. Okay, so Reuters, November. Oh goodness, November the 17th, this morning, GMT +8. Obviously, I'm in Bali, Manila, Hong Kong time. Okay, so let's have a look. So yes, Thrasio, the biggest aggregator in the Amazon industry, juggernaut, touching valuations of maybe 4 billion. I know they raised upwards of 3 billion, acquiring companies left, right and center, particularly 2020, 2021 and 2022, although less so in 2022. We did see a little bit of a come down. And this was a part of what, to give a little bit of context, this was a part of like an economic boom, which we seen. Even more than an economic boom, we had this hyper availability of cash in the markets. We had like super low interest rates, which basically means that the banks are giving out money super cheap, which is the opposite of what it is now, where by getting money and mortgages, they've all rates have increased. So it's a different market now. But to understand how this went from zero to juggernaut, you've got to understand the market. What they're doing in classic case really is mergers and acquisitions. They're doing roll-ups essentially. They're acquiring companies in the market or in a specific industry, which in our case is Amazon FBA. They are raising capital, equity, also raising debt, I would imagine too, in order to fund these acquisitions and basically trying to capture a wave. And that was the ever-growing wave of Amazon.com specifically, but Amazon across the world. And now they end up bankrupt. So how did that happen? I haven't spoken to a lot of aggregators last year, some of the big ones as well. I spoke to Thrasio as well, actually, funnily enough. I know a lot of the criteria they were looking for. They were looking for over 1 million EBITDA, also Razor Group and a few others like that. I think they were looking for 1 million EBITDA. When we spoke, I spoke to one of the senior directors there. They were looking for below, although not specifically, but below 15% ACOTS. They were looking at a wide range of companies, but they were looking for something that had an edge, from what I understood in my conversations, and as with most aggregators. So let's read this article together and see what we can figure out and see what we can garner from this and as to what that means for our industry, which is e-commerce and Amazon FBA. So I will try to give a financial, economic, Amazon FBA entrepreneur perspective on this, using some of my background on it. Let's see what we can figure out. All right, let's dig in. So they prepare for bankruptcy, so they're going to be putting in their filings. What Reuters puts it down to is it grapples a post-pandemic slump in online spending. The Wall Street Journal reported on Thursday. Let's see if we can get anything more from the Wall Street Journal. Okay, we can't get it off the Wall Street Journal because they're paywall with their efforts. Okay, let's check it out. So, no. Turnaround professionals, they're trying to turn things around, not good. They're not immediately respond for Reuters' request for comment. Thrasio said it raised 1 billion in funding led by private equity firm Silver Lake, taking its funding total to $3.4 billion. Wow. In 2021 it raised $1 billion and it was looking at restructuring. So obviously restructuring, trying to cut some losses, trying to find a way to maybe cut some operating expenses, etc. So there's not much here. So I did open up this article, which is by Payments again, maybe a little bit less credible than, or not a little bit less credible than Reuters for sure, but let's see what they can get, because some of the bigger newspapers, they obviously don't want to get involved with saying anything that might be, let's say, potentially bad about the company. Okay, so Decline in online spending. So it's very apparent that a couple of them are saying decline in online spending. I mean, it was pretty obvious, I think, for anyone with an Amazon business, outside of probably at the start of the pandemic when we kind of all had the option to sell our companies. Like, yeah, but that had been good, potentially. Obviously, as I said earlier on, credit was available very cheap. Money was awash in the market. It's kind of like hindsight's 2020. We will have serious experience and perspective based on that, or I feel like I haven't looked at it from a financial perspective and economic perspective. But sometimes it's easier to get caught up in the wave and think this is going to go on forever. Classic pre-recession action. I know we're not technically in a recession yet, but it will be soon. It will be soon. So yeah, look, when you look at Thrasio, they're one of the biggest companies. They are the biggest company in the Amazon industry. So as much as there's a post-pandemic slump, if either they've over-levered, they've taken on too much investment, but like, if there's anyone that's going to survive a slump, it would be a large company, because a larger company like Thrasio would have access to the capital markets, obviously the debt markets, obviously raising more funds. So actually, you know what the top of this article says? Mulls bankruptcy. Maybe they considered raising funds as well. Okay, let's see. Okay, yeah, so they consider raising additional capital or exploring options, including the possibility of filing for bankruptcy. So this article was September the 27th, so it appears they have now decided to file for bankruptcy, which is kind of telling, really, because having, let's say, the ability to raise, but then either an inability to let's say, or maybe people didn't want to invest, obviously, so the business is not good internally, you would say, financially. If investors were given a peek under the hood, things were not good. Or alternatively, they just decided that it wasn't worth it, which is also not good. So let's see what they say here. The business model known as Amazon aggregation, pre-pandemic norms resulting in fewer online purchases. Yes, that may be true in a lot of cases. However, it's not as clear cut as that, because we have a lot of clients that are growing in sales, even dramatically. My company, many people I know still growing in sales. So it definitely depends on the niche. It depends on the industry within commerce, if you're growing or if you are shrinking in sales. You know, so it's not as clear cut as that. And maybe me and the team and the profits are so good that might be the case in terms of our agency. But it is what it is. I joke. It is what it is. So we've got large raisings that are raised. 3.4 billion from investment firms, went on an acquisition spree. Makes sense. The shifting shopping trends has made investors wary of supporting companies focused on selling niche products on Amazon. So this is obviously industry wide. This will have an impact on the entire industry. There's no two ways about that. This will reverberate around. Thrasio significant funding, Advent International leading the initial equity financing, and Silver Lake leading the Series D financing round. So Series D being the next round. Obviously starts Series A, Series B, and so on at each stage of, let's say, development of the company. So they'd raised 3 previous rounds before that. Has not shielded its... Okay. Sorry, my aircon had gone off there. So yeah, the raising didn't shield it from any financial challenges per the report. In response to the difficulties, Thrasio underwent significant changes last year, including a workforce reduction of approximately 20% and the appointment of Greg Greeley, former Amazon executive. So they looked at reducing their operating expenses. They looked at increasing their operating margin, essentially. So they just had a lot of, it seems to be the workforce, so that the salaries of employees were too high. And that they cut that. And that presents a very difficult thing as well, because in our industry we can see a lot of micro brands going really big, 7 figures, 8 figures and beyond. But potentially at Thrasio's level, maybe it's almost like the 1-2, as in they need a lot of people to get really specific passion behind each of the brands, and not many of the founders would have stayed on. They probably would have had some founders stay on after they acquired, but the same spark, the same passion might not be there. And in a very specific market like Amazon, where they can get quite competitive. You know, the thing with Amazon is data is everywhere. There is a almost, I wouldn't say it's transparency, but everyone's very much aware of the sales and the almost not the conversions, but the sales and the volumes in the market. So it's quite open in that people are, the more data available, the more data for people to digest, the more competitive it is. You know, what it reminds me of a little bit is poker, when I used to play poker. And in poker, they have a theory, they have a what's called game selection. And that means no matter how good you are at poker, you cannot be the worst player at the table. So you might be, for example, a 10-year experienced poker player, but if you sit at a table and everyone else is maybe not necessarily years experience, but everyone else is better than you, that would be bad game selection, and you will ultimately lose. Now, poker is competitive because everyone knows the odds, having played poker and won tournaments and cash games and so on. Everyone knows the odds based on the cards they hold, what your chance is or your probability is of hitting a card. But not only do you know that because it's basic maths, but everyone else at the table knows that. So therefore, it's competitive. Yeah, quite simply put. And Amazon can be competitive because of that as well. The more data that's freely available, the less mystique, the less you have to play with as far as creating that asymmetrical advantage, you know, creating that edge. Now, the way to stay ahead, obviously, going back to bringing in Warren Buffett with was a product moat, you know, a product moat. So obviously Amazon key is having a product moat that you are behind, you have passion, you have experience. It doesn't have to be from the start. Obviously many private label businesses, including mine, it doesn't have to be from the start. You can start off with a Me Too product, but then move into something, or develop the brand, develop the expertise so that you develop a real moat, you know, and the brand as well, you know. So that is key. The key on Amazon is staying 2 or 3 steps ahead of the competition, because competition is inevitable. So you got to look at the key levers where you can affect that, you know, whether that's the product, whether that's visibility, whether that's conversion, whether that's SEO, whether that's utilizing all the features. It is a game. It is a fun game, but yeah, that's part of it. Okay, so next one we've got here is, so they're talking about Thrasio Group, who also filed for bankruptcy. So it is a case where there is, let's say, a downturn in the market overall, not in all niches, at least not in a lot of our clients' niches. That was the worst attempt at a wink ever, but I think you got the picture. Okay. So yeah, look, the funding has dried up. Obviously, we're in a different time than we were 2 years ago, when they were giving out cash like for free, essentially. I was about to say almost for free. It was for free. Obviously, a lot of countries got like free money, a lot of the citizens, and that led to a boom. It led to inflation, obviously, and it led to a bust, essentially. The economy got too hot. So that's what's happened. Thrasio are out of the game. The more I find out here, now this article is a few weeks old, I will look at, because I'm not entirely sure what the reason is here. More was going to come out on this story, so as this story gets developed, I think Reuters will add to this and so on. I will update this video or add another video where we can maybe dive into a bit more of the specifics behind Thrasio in terms of what led to their downfall, what that means for the Amazon FBA industry, what that means for me, what that means for you, and how we can focus on keeping strong profit in our business, strong valuations for our companies, and yeah. So that's it, folks. I'll catch you on the next one.